run on Channel 97. So those members who were not able to attend today can still get the content from this presentation. And with that, Art, I'm going to let you start.
Before we begin, I want to thank you for your patience. I want to go ahead and stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We're going to turn it over to Arturo Vela.
As I was introduced, my name is Art Vela, Public Works Director for the City of Banning. I've been with the city now for a while. Actually, I believe I came back to the city in 2005. Been in the Public Works Department since then. Before that, I actually worked for the city for about 3 years as I transitioned to college as a meter reader. So I'm very familiar with the city, very familiar with water use. In addition to being the Public Works Director for the city, I've sat as the chair of the Beaumont Basin Water Master for the past 6 years, I believe. So water is a subject that I'm familiar with. Water is a subject that we discuss every day. It's very complicated. There's a lot of exterior factors that we consider when we talk about water. And today, I was invited to talk about California's water conservation regulations. So I plan on touching a little bit on that and a couple of other things that we're working on from a management perspective and some of the challenges with dealing with this new emergency mandate. So again, some of the topics that I want to consider today is the governor's executive order, what we call the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, which is a strategic document to help us get through droughts and or reduction in our water supply, so catastrophic failures to our infrastructure, for example. I want to talk about the prohibitions that are in the Water Shortage Contingency Plan and some of our conservation and management efforts. And so we'll start with the executive orders. So the drought's been going on for a while in California, evidenced by the governor's executive orders. We've seen several of them. We saw one in April of 21st, May 10th, July 8th, and October 19th of 2021. More recently, the governor issued Executive Order N722 on March 28th, which required a couple of things from the State Water Resource Control Board. And I only listed two, actually three, because these are the three that impact us as a water retailer and you as a customer. The first is they required us to develop what's called an annual water supply demand assessment. So this is a very detailed analysis of what our water supply is going to look like next year, as well as our projections for what our water demand is going to be. The second bullet there is the implementation of our water shortage contingency plan for our stage 2 or level 2. Water shortage contingency plans have 6 levels, and they are requiring us to implement stage 2 of the WSCP. And then the third item is banning irrigation of non-functional turf. So that executive order was followed by the State Water Resource Control Board adopting emergency regulations on May 24th. They define non-functional turf as turf that is solely ornamental and not regularly used for human recreational purposes or for civic or community events. What the emergency regulation requires us to do is not allow watering of non-functional turf unless necessary to ensure the health of trees and non-turf planting. And so this is a bullet that I think will be a topic of discussion moving forward, possibly here and throughout the community. And you know, obviously, trees use a lot less water than turf. And so there's going to be some limitations there when we start getting requests for waivers of not irrigating their turf because they want to keep their trees alive. I think, you know, we just need to develop some reasonable threshold for that. The state also, as stated in the executive order, was detailed on requiring that we submit a preliminary and final annual water supply and demand assessment. We have done that. We have submitted ours on the deadlines. And I just summarized what our water supply and demand assessment shows. So in 2023, we're showing that we're going to have a supply of water of 9,646 acre feet. Our demand is going to be 7,577 acre feet. So we show that we have a surplus of 2,069 acre feet. What I want to note for you is that these numbers do not represent how much water we have in the Beaumont Storage Basin. The Beaumont Storage Basin, if you don't know, is an adjudicated basin. There's a couple of water retailers, the City of Banning, Beaumont-Trevi Valley Water District, Yucaipa, Morongo. Let's see who else. I believe the City of Beaumont, although they're not a water retailer. We all have storage accounts in the Beaumont Basin. The City of Banning has a little north of 47,000 acre feet of water in the storage basin, and that storage basin, it acts as our savings account. And we've been putting water in that basin for several years now to get us through these droughts. The State Water Resource Control Board, again, as noted in the executive order, requires us to implement stage 2 of our water shortage contingency plan. So what's in the water shortage contingency plan? There's a lot of items there. I listed here for you the ones that we're going to focus on. There's several of them that really don't apply to our average customer. And then there's also water response actions that aren't listed here that the City of Banning is required to implement. And so these will apply to our average customer. Bullet 1 is landscape irrigation limited to no more than 2 days a week from June 1st to October 31st, 1 day a week from November 1st to May 31st. In addition to that, you'll be confined to 10 minutes per station, no irrigation during or within 72 hours of a rain event, and no irrigation from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So I want to address a couple of questions that I've been asked today and that I've been asked ahead of this meeting is, how restrictive are those going to be? How are we going to be policing that? And the answer is no. The City of Banning does not have staff to go out there and sit in front of your house and say, you water for 11 minutes, you're going to get fined. We just don't have the resources for that. Our expectation, and again, I can't say you don't have to follow this. This is what is in our water shortage contingency plan that was approved by the State Water Resource Control Board and that was approved by City Council. City Council also knows that we don't have the staff to police this and enforce it. Do we have the enforcement authority? Yes. More importantly, what we want to see is just a reasonable use of water. We don't want to see water running down the street. If that means, if you're watering 10 minutes per station, and as a result of that, water's running down the street, then we're going to be okay with you changing that. If you want to go 3 days a week, at maybe 7 minutes per station, then, if that resolves the issue of having water running down the street, then we're okay with that. What we don't want to see is 5 days a week, 10 minutes a station, 4 days a week, 10 minutes a station, But again, we're just wanting to see a reasonable use of water, that we're all making the conscious effort to conserve water. The no irrigation during or within 72 hours of a rain event, I can't tell you how many times we drive through the communities in Banning, and we see that. And it's really to no one's fault. I think people are busy. Sometimes, I run into folks all the time that don't know how to turn off their controller. And so we just, again, need to make that effort to understand how to turn off our controller. If you note that there's going to be rain, and maybe you don't realize that there's going to be rain in 72 hours. But maybe that day, if it's raining, and you know that your sprinklers are going to come on, let's turn them off. The second bullet there, no refilling of ornamental lakes and ponds unless to sustain aquatic life. I presented this in this same room probably about a month and a half ago, and someone asked, well, what if there's fish in the pond? If there's fish in a pond, then that's an exemption, and we're going to allow you to keep that pond full. No washing sidewalks or driveways. Again, that's just an obvious one. Excessive irrigation runoff is prohibited, as I mentioned before. Cease all decorative water features. This is one that was specifically in the executive order that, it's something that we have to enforce. And really, I can't tell you, I don't know for a fact how much water this saves the city by doing this. What I can tell you that it really helps with the public perception, right? We can't require everybody to conserve water while we have these fancy water features everywhere. I believe that we may be able to find some solutions and use a non-potable water source for certain fountains. And for those, you know, again, from a public perception standard, we should post signs that say, you know, kept full with non-potable water. And so again, that'll be something that the city handles on a case-by-case basis. Repair or isolate leaks within 40 hours of being notified. And then pool spas must be covered to prevent evaporation. Again, another one that we just, I mean, it's going to be very difficult for us to police. And I think a lot of people already do this, just, you know, just to save money. But again, just something that's going to be difficult for us to enforce. What I do want to show you right now, and I want to give the HOA board and staff kudos. They've been very proactive in identifying areas. Can you guys hear me? You guys can hear me back there, right? Okay, perfect. They've been very proactive in identifying areas within the community, the Sun Lakes Country Club community, that we would consider non-functional turf areas. And so I was given this map. I agree with this map. I think it's well put together, and it identifies those areas that we would expect that would not be watered. There are areas, you know, that have turf and parkways or medians that are used for community events or civic events that we're going to be fine to keep irrigation on. And I had 2 more slides just to kind of show you some zoomed in areas if you couldn't see the last slide. So the main entrance, all of the turf on I guess I should back up. The green areas are areas that we feel we could justify exempting from this requirement. The red areas are areas that we would expect that we would not irrigate, or at least drastically reduce the amount of irrigation. So Sun Lakes Boulevard, Highland Springs Avenue going south of Sun Lakes. Here's the southern portion of that exhibit. So again, I applaud the board's efforts in this. It just shows their willingness to participate in this program, participate in these efforts, and that goes a long way for us. So just to touch on a couple of other conservation and water management efforts that the city is in the process of implementing. One is related to SB 606 and AB 1668, which requires us to reduce our water losses. And typically, the city's water losses happen in a couple of ways. One, we have inaccurate meters. So we know how much water we're producing, and that does not equal the amount of water we sell. And sometimes, again, that's through inaccurate meters. It happens through our own flushing program. So we have dead-end water lines. We have to flush those to maintain water quality. It happens a majority through water leaks. And what the unfortunate thing about leaks is the only leaks that we know about are the ones that we see. And not all water leaks surface. And so on Tuesday, I presented to City Council a contract to hire a contractor that will come out here with special sounding equipment that's going to sound about 1/3 of our city, identify underground water leaks that, again, that we don't know about, and try to isolate those leaks. Very expensive program, unfortunately, because, I mean, we're talking about excavating, repairing old water mains, and I'm expecting that we're going to have a lot of point repairs after that survey. But again, you know, it's something that we have to do, reduce our water leaks, reduce our water losses, not just to comply with these bills, but I see water leaks and water losses as non-water revenue. You know, it costs all of us money to produce the water, treat the water, put the water in the system, and if we don't collect revenue for that, then it's just lost product. And so we really want to reduce our water losses. The other practice that I want to highlight for you is our groundwater management practices. So I talked about the Beaumont Basin. We have a lot of groundwater recharge in the Beaumont Basin. The picture here is a picture of the San Gorgonio Pass Water Agency recharge ponds. And a lot of people say, well, you know, every time I drive by it, it's empty. It's going to be empty a majority of the year, if not for several years. But what we want to make sure that we have is the infrastructure in the ground for when we have those wet years, because that's part of our water resource planning. We use what we have in our storage account during drought periods, and we want to take advantage of the wet periods to ensure that we get through the next drought period. We have, as I mentioned, several years worth of water in storage, and as I mentioned, use storage in droughts, replenish during wet years. The other effort is our recycled water supply. This is something that we've been working on for a while. We actually had a wastewater treatment plant improvement to produce recycled water completed in 2009. And I get asked a lot, well, why didn't we build it? We need recycled water. Well, we do eventually need recycled water to supplement our potable water use. The problem is that our demand stayed stagnant for about 10 years, that it just didn't make sense for us, because it's going to be very expensive not only to build it, but it will be very expensive to operate it as well. And so if we would have built it 10 years ago, we would have all been paying for the operation of that recycled water plant without really needing the recycled water. But now that we have development coming up, we're working on a plan. I'm hoping to kick the wastewater treatment plant improvement, the design for that. And again, we have to redesign it just because the plans are kind of stale. Technology has changed. I'm hoping to start that design in this upcoming year. In addition to the wastewater treatment plant, we have our non-potable water distribution system that's going into the ground now. We have a contractor out there on Lincoln Street in San Gorgonio finalizing that pipeline. Several years ago, we installed the first segment of that, which ended here, or I should say started here at the intersection of Highland Home Road and Sun Lakes Boulevard, went out to the intersection of 22nd and Lincoln. About 12 months ago, we started the construction of that, so now we're taking it from 22nd and Lincoln. Again, they're at the intersection right now of Lincoln and San Gorgonio. They're going to go down San Gorgonio, cross westward to what we call a non-potable water well 1. So we have a non-potable water source, and we plan to produce non-potable water and bring that to Sun Lakes so that you could irrigate your golf course. And I just wanted just a kind of little sidebar. The city has recycled water. We just don't have what's called Title 22 recycled water. We have recycled water because we treat our wastewater to what's called secondary effluent standards. That goes in the ground and it's stored in the Cabazon storage basin. We have a well that's ready to extract that, and that's what we're doing. We also are finalizing our fine-tuning of what we call a drop counter, which is going to be a customer portal that will provide you a lot of real-time information on your water use. You can set water budgets, but more importantly, the system will be able to notify you if it notices that you have a water leak. And so I'm hoping through those efforts we can reduce some of the water leaks on the customer side. We are also working on the conversion of some of these non-functional turf in our right-of-ways. Sun Lakes Boulevard is a great example. We have a grant opportunity right now before us that we are preparing a grant application for to obtain money through the Integrated Regional Water Management Program to convert all of these non-functional turf areas in the public right-of-way to drought-resistant landscapes or xeriscapes. So I think Sun Lakes Boulevard is a great project for that program. We have a couple other areas throughout the city. I've talked to Chris a couple times about this. It's likely that we'll approach the board to give us a support letter that will go a long ways in getting some of that funding. And so it's a good use of that money. That's what the money's intended for. And I feel that we'll have a good opportunity to get funding for it. Additionally, and if we are unlucky enough to get those grant funds this year and in the future, we plan on allocating funds from our water operations to convert some of those areas. And the last thing I want to mention on some of our efforts is a turf replacement pilot. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a while. We don't have a lot of staff at the moment to try to develop a program, but my goal is that this year that we have a turf replacement pilot, just to see how much interest there is, kind of fine-tune that program, see where the do's and don'ts are, and I'm hoping to kick that off this year. And if it's a successful pilot, then it's very likely that next year we'll allocate more funding to continue it. So a real quick summary and a couple of takeaway points that I wanted to highlight for you. One, the water conservation mandate is applicable to all water agencies, no matter their water supply, whether it's good or bad. And I'll admit that ours is good. The city, our community has been investing in water, as I mentioned, for quite some time to get us through these periods. But the state doesn't see it like that. The state didn't go from agency to agency to develop restrictions for each agency. They took a blanket approach like they did the last time that we had to deal with, and they said, hey, everybody has to comply with this. Conservation will help maintain a healthy amount of water storage. So even though we do have water in the ground and we know confidently that we can get through this drought, and I'll skip to the very last bullet, the state's model is making water conservation a way of life. I personally, in my opinion, see that water use restrictions are only going to get more stringent in the future. And so this is just something that we have to acknowledge, and something that we have to change our use patterns to be a little bit more reasonable on how we use our water. The third bullet, the local area has actively invested in management of groundwater supplies for many years to prepare for droughts, as I mentioned. Hats off to the San Gabriel Pass Water Agency. They've been very active in expanding their water portfolio to ensure that we have imported water into the future. They have a Table A water supply, or that's their allocation of state water project water, which is unreliable at best. But they have several other agreements with private parties and other water agencies, long-term agreements that are going to ensure that we have water in our area. And then I mentioned already that Banning has 48,700 acre-feet of water stored in the Beaumont Basin. So I want to touch on one item before I finish and open it up to question and answers. And again, this is another question that I get a lot, and it's sometimes the elephant in the room. And the question is, well, we've been in this drought for a long time. Why is Banning allowing development? And Banning is allowing development because of the facts that I just shared with you, because we have water supply to support that development. One, again, we can support it. Two, it's important for our city to economically develop our city. It helps from that perspective, not just for the water agency or the electric department, but for the general fund and some of the other services that the city provides. As I mentioned, our water demand stayed stagnant for a very long time. And I remember there was about a 10 to 12 year period where we issued and closed on 8 new houses. So our customer base stayed very small, but our fixed costs kept going up for electric, for water, for wastewater. And so these developments are going to help with that. It's going to help spread all of our expenses across more customers. Is that a reason alone to allow development? No. But again, there's resources here to support those developments. State law requires us, and actually it's the California Water Code requires us, that large developments prepare what's called a water supply assessment. That water supply assessment is a document that justifies that a water retailer has enough water now and in the future to supply and support that development. So that's kind of a stopgap for us. Some of these larger developments, we've gone a step further and asked them to prepare for every phase a water verification study. Water supplies change from year to year, and so as they complete phases, we require them to double check those calculations in the water supply assessment, include any changes in our water supplies, and again, confirm that those water supplies are there. And I believe that is all I wanted to mention. So I will wrap it up. Again, thank you for the invitation. I'm excited that you guys are interested to learn more about the regulation and what the prohibitions are. And again, as I mentioned, the water shortage contingency plan, when we developed that, which is part of our urban water management plan, and I invite you all to take a look at that. The urban water management plan, very detailed document that the state requires us to put together every 5 years. It's a long-term planning document for our water resources, and it includes a water shortage contingency plan. When we put that together, we put it following the state's guidelines, and we also put it together with the intent that we would implement stages of the water shortage contingency plan when we have catastrophic failures in our system. you know, again, from a water supply perspective, I just can't think of a scenario that our groundwater supply would have a shortfall to have to enact one of these stages. For us, it's going to be, you know, we have a reservoir go down, we have a large transmission main go down that reduces how much our production capacity is and how much our delivery capacity is to our customers. It wasn't intended for regulated droughts, in my opinion. And so on Tuesday, we went to council, I went to council, we made some revisions to the water shortage contingency plan, and that was adopted by City Council on Tuesday. And so I have sent to Chris a copy of the updated water shortage contingency plan. There wasn't a lot of changes, just a couple of tweaks. And so hopefully he circulates that to the community. And if not, it will be on the City of Banning's webpage. You can go to the Public Works Department, go down to water, and you'll have a lot of water documents, urban water management plan, the water shortage contingency plan, our integrated master plan, all of that's there. And lastly, if you can't find it, please reach out to me and I'll send you a copy. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Art. Give him a great presentation. If you have any questions, please come up to the podium, state your name, and Art will give you an excellent answer.
I'll do my best.
Anyone have any concerns or questions like to come up?
Good morning. Can you hear me? My name is Gail Martin, and I'm a new resident here. I've been here for about a month. I'm delighted to see that the city and the HOA is interested and concerned and managing this as things unfold. I do want to ask, please, what is the name of our water district?
It's the City of Banning. The City of Banning is the water retailer. So we're a little different, you know, from Beaumont. Beaumont gets water from the Beaumont-Cherry Valley Water District. Then you got the Yucaipa Valley Water District. Our water system is owned and operated by the City of Banning.
My name is Beverly Agner, and I have lived in Sun Lakes for 20 years, and I've lived in the Pass area for 52 years. So I've seen quite a bit go on. I had two questions given to me yesterday. One was, how are you going to monitor the use of the water at each individual home? I know that we get our cubic foot measurement from month to month and so forth. And if we go over what we have used, or say over the last 2 years, is there going to be a penalty for that household? And if they've added some other person to their household, do we notify the water district so that they are aware that we may be using more? Sorry for the confusion, but
No, thank you. Great questions. And so as I mentioned, we don't have the resources to monitor on a day-to-day basis water use. What we do have is that, you know, our new automatic meter reading infrastructure does collect that data. Mm-hmm. You know, and again, I don't have anybody to sit there and look at each account, right? I think what we'll use that for is if there's blatant overusers, if there's careless water use, we'll go into those accounts and see, okay, hey, you know, everybody in your community is using, let's say, 50 units a month. You're using 2,000. Something's wrong, right? Something's right. And really, there is a penalty. I think the state allowed us $500 per day, if I'm not mistaken. That's not our objective. You know, our objective is going to reach out, educate. You know, again, if there's a water user that has high water use, hopefully we can identify that they have a leak, save them some money, save us some water.
Right.
And again, the penalty, in my opinion, is going to come in when there's just complete disregard for what's going on. If we've reached out, they're not improving, and we've tried to help. If we've tried to implement a program for them, and they're just careless, and at that point we may decide to issue a penalty.
Okay, and if there's an additional person that has moved into the house in the last year, is there any reason why we have to notify the water district? If I know we're going to go up a little bit because we're bound to, but if it's not unreasonable usage, then you don't really care.
That's right. And so roughly, well, yeah, we really don't care. From a water use perspective, we don't. Well, and I say that because 60 to 75% of your water use is outside, right? Unless you are in a brand new house like at Atwell, where they have a very efficient landscaping, but they also have very efficient fixtures in their house. We'll still see maybe around 35 to 50% of their water use outside, but a majority of your water use is outside. And in a community like this, where there's a lot of grass out here, a lot of it's a relatively older community as far as the homes and the type of landscaping that was installed, and so we would expect to see much higher use outside than inside. And so if you added a person to your house, it probably wouldn't even be noted in the system. There's going to be a little bit more water use, but
Just 1 to 2 cubic feet
exactly,
I've
it won't
noticed
be
each
much.
month.
It won't be much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for your input.
Good morning. My name is Chantal Cedillo. I just have two quick questions. Two quick questions. Thank you. Could have think of that. Okay. I was just wondering if the city maybe is working with the state in order to give the people that want to save money by putting synthetic grass and to get a rebate or some kind of credit. Personally, I do have a big loan because I have a corner house. It would be a lot of money to change it. So it would help like they did for the electricity, with the solar. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say, okay? So that would be nice to know. Also, now I'm embarrassed a little bit about this because I think I should know. I've lived here for 14 years. But I was under the impression that the golf course was watered with non-potable water. So was I wrong? Are we using good water to water the golf? There have been so many discussions about it for the last 14 years, ins and out. So what's going on?
Yeah, sure. Let me answer the first one. So we are working with the state through, I mentioned that the Integrated Regional Water Management Program, which has a funding source right now, which is Proposition 1, the second round of Proposition 1 for IRWM programs. We are hoping to be successful in getting funding to do turf replacements for non-functional turf. Right? This funding source will not be to fund a citywide turf replacement program. But the city intends to develop a turf replacement pilot program, again, just to see how much interest there is. And the reason we're doing that, not only because we have limited staff resources, but it's hit and miss. I've talked to a lot of water agencies. Some say that it was successful, some say that it wasn't. And so we want to have a pilot program, see how much interest there is. And again, if there's a lot of interest and it's something that is going to be easy to justify for us to continue funding. And then the golf course question, this one, it's probably partially our fault for the confusion of this. We have one well that is considered a non-potable well that is dedicated to providing water to the golf course lakes, which is where you pull water from. During high demand periods like summer peak hours, we have to supplement that water with potable water. So we have a couple of other wells that we kick on that are potable water wells that will provide water to that. The confusion, if you kept up with Chromium-6, in 2016 when the state developed the Chromium-6 standard, we had a couple wells that exceeded that standard at the time, which was 10 MCL. Those wells we converted to non-potable wells. We said, all right, we're not going to put that water in the water system, in our potable distribution system. We converted them to non-potable, and then we were using those wells to put water in the lakes. When the state got sued and they had to retract that Chromium-6 standard, those wells were now in compliance again, so they are now potable water wells. So,
well, thank you for the information.
Confusing, I know.
Good morning. I'm Carol Creco. I just have a suggestion. I have done this for years. We have a bucket in our shower, and then when you go to take a shower, you turn the water on, and it's cold. And I run that water in a bucket, and then I turn around, I get my shower, shut it off, and I have a bucket of water that I go out and water my plants with.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
How you doing? My name's Steve Weitz, and I just want, before I leave here today, I want to make sure what I heard is right. When you drive through the community, you see some people have taken water conservation to heart, like the lady taking the bucket in the shower, that kind of stuff. And then there's others that their lawns are really nice and dark green. What I've heard you say today, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that people who are reacting to this in a way that causes us to let our front yards die or our backyards die, or we take a bucket into the shower, are really overreactions. Is that a correct assessment?
No, I wouldn't say it's an overreaction. I think if anything, they're ahead of the game and starting to create habits that that we may all have to implement at some point.
At some point.
At some point, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, water restrictions in California get worse every year. They get more stringent every year.
Right.
You know, and a lot of the restrictions that the governor has put on us this year were kind of snowballed from previous years. This one's a little bit more restrictive than the last mandate. I'm expecting that the next mandate is going to be even more restrictive. And so if people begin to create those habits, then again they're going to have less of a headache in the future, in my opinion.
But like you're saying that these 2 day a week, 10 minutes per station, they're not etched in stone for the residents of Banning.
They are.
They are.
Yeah, they are.
There's just no enforcement.
And that's what I was getting at. If you know. Yeah, it's the city's policy. It's a plan. Those prohibitions are in a plan that have been approved by the state, adopted by city council.
And I realize you can't go on TV and say, no, don't follow the water restrictions. But when I'm walking out of here today, that's kind of the feeling I'm getting.
So if we start getting calls, and this is going to happen, I guarantee it. We're going to start getting calls. Hey, my neighbor has a bunch of water running down the street, and at that point, I might have to send a guy out, and he's going to verify it.
That's reasonable.
We'll probably reach out and say, hey, you have a bunch of water running down the street.
That's reasonable.
Right. And again, if we get another call, that's how the enforcement process starts. The reason that I say that if the 10 minutes per station is causing water to run down, and you adjust that by adding a day, reducing the timing. And the amount of water that you're using a week is the same, still meets the 10 minutes per station. And again, I don't know how many stations you have at your house, so it's going to be very difficult for us to calculate. But if you take those actions to reduce the misuse of water, which would be the water down the street, and you've tweaked what your program is, and it's going to be hard for us to say, hey, you're not doing the right thing.
Okay, would it be a fair assessment to say, as long as you're not obviously wasting water, there's no reason to take the bucket into the shower and catch the gallon and a half that you would, while the shower's warming up? You might say that is something that goes beyond the pale of what the vast majority are doing.
I think that it's a good practice. It's a good practice. It's actually I've heard of that practice for a while now. Mm-hmm. Not something new. Yeah. Otherwise that water is just going down the drain. It's going down to the wastewater treatment plant. We're paying money to treat that water, and then again we paid for that. All of us, and I'm saying the city. We all paid to produce that water, and get it to your faucet. Okay. And I don't want to say don't do that. I think it's a really, really good practice.
Oh, I don't disagree.
It's really another form of water harvesting, right? People have barrels out and they collect rainwater and use rainwater.
Right, but I've talked to some people in the community, and they tend to, some people are hardcore, you got to shut your sprinklers off, we got to go complete bare yards, front and back. And I've talked to others say, I'm really not too worried about this. where should our concerns lie?
I think you should implement, at minimum, implement the policies that are adopted by the city. Again, with a little bit of flexibility on tweaking things to avoid other issues. But if you want to take those additional measures, please take them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a limited resource. It is. I used to live out in the arid areas. One final thing, and this is more for the HOA folks, because since this has been in effect June 10th, I personally am aware of these requirements not being met out on Sun Lakes Boulevard.
We met with Art, the board met with Art. When did you come speak to us? Last week?
Yes.
And this was presented to the board with the June 10th start date. And the board asked Art if we could come into compliance as soon as we could do this town hall so that everybody knew what was going on. So he has given us a little leeway to really come into compliance so that we could make this presentation, he could make this presentation today. So you will see changes, but here's Chris. Here's Chris.
So one of the other things, if you look at the regulations that came down, there's a section that says HOAs can present plans to the city and get that approved to control how they're going to do water. That's what you saw in the PowerPoint that Sun Lakes completed that based on that meeting, submitted it, and now we can move forward to start restricting all those red areas on the exterior. The green areas can still stay in play.
Can I ask, and this is, I'm just wondering, of the areas that are irrigated, the red lines, what percentage of our non-functional turf does that represent?
The red areas of non-functional, well, it's going to be 100% non-functional if it's red.
Okay.
So all the red areas were designated by the city as non-functional. The green areas that you might consider non-functional, that was submitted to say there is a function to that, to the city, and the city accepted that. So all of those reds, those were considered non-functional, and the city of Banyan agreed with that.
So that's a pretty small...
It's all the medians, the perimeters, couple of areas inside the community, well, the medians, but the median in front, as you're coming in, will still be functional. Some of the areas around the clubhouse will still be functional because they're still used for events. And that's, and so that's what the city, we submitted to the city for acceptance. That's what was talking about.
And what we can do is we can provide you with a copy of that.
That map?
That map, yeah, and it'll be online.
Oh, it'll be online,
Yeah,
okay.
so thank you very much for your questions.
Wait a
If
minute,
there's-
Bob, I have a comment on that. Sorry. Functional and non-functional is about how often you can water it. Non-functional means you can do this, if I'm saying this correctly. You can water it twice a week, 10 minutes a day. Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
the prohibition in the State Water Resource Control Board says that you are not allowed to water non-functional.
At all? So functional is the one that can be watered twice a week, 10 minutes a day, or 4 times a week, 5 minutes a day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. I'd like to thank Art for his, will you have one more question? Okay.
Right under the wire.
What will happen to the waterfalls?
Good question.
So those would fall under decorative water features, if I remember the verbiage right. And so if they use potable water, then they will have to be
Yeah,
turned
but
off.
there's no more questions.
I've talked to Chris
I don't
about a
want
couple
one
of
person.
options that we could perhaps do to fill them up with non-potable water. But again, the challenge there is dealing with the public perception. And so if that option is feasible, then we would want to see signs posted, purple signs posted saying, filled with non-potable water. Other than that, they're not allowed to have water.
Yeah, the laws, the drought, it's tough on all of us. I look out my front yard, it's brown. And I'm considering taking it all out and making an arid area. And I guess a lot of us are going to start thinking that way because the drought's not going to go away. So we got to do what we can do to try to support it in one way, shape, or form. Thank you.
True. Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Here comes Don. While Don's walking up, the golf course, the fountains on the golf course will still be active. That's because they're part of the irrigation system. So the fountains on the golf course and those lakes are still going to continue.
Thank you. I wondered if Art might clarify a few things for me and us. I understand we have an underground water table that is naturally occurring that we do not add water to. Is that correct?
We have, so the Beaumont Basin Water Storage Unit has artificial recharge to it. So it's imported water that we put into.
Is that the underground water table that we understand is?
That is correct, yeah.
And that is down compared to where it's been historically?
No, actually. So the Beaumont Basin Water Master, I can't tell you the exact numbers. The Beaumont Basin Water Master does an annual report every year that reports on water levels, has historic water levels. In our area, so the Beaumont Basin, if you could picture, there's a big point. It covers actually where we're sitting today, and it goes all the way down to Highland Home Road. In that area that's within the city of Banning limits, it stayed pretty stable. Because the water actually flows to the east. So from the recharge basins, they create a big water mound, and it begins flowing to the east. Some of it goes to the west, but a majority of it comes to the east. Now, what I'll also say is the city's in a unique position in that we have 3 other groundwater storage units that we are the sole producers of water of. So we have very good control of those water basins. Those groundwater storage units we do not artificially recharge. Then we have the Cabazon storage unit, which and actually that's one of our largest storage units in our area, and that goes from Banning, starts at about San Gregorio and goes all the way to the 10-111 split. That's artificially recharged with the water leaving our wastewater treatment plant.
So when you talk about water basins, potable and non-potable wells, do we assume that some of these are above ground, some of these are underground? Could you just summarize that real quick?
Sure, yeah. We produce 100% of our water from the ground. Okay. The above ground water, the above ground storage reservoirs that we have are there to meet some of our peak flows and fire demands, right? And so our peak flows, they fluctuate throughout the day. And so when we are not producing enough water from the ground to meet that, we begin draining our storage tanks.
So the underground storage, is that a larger percentage than the above ground?
Oh yeah, by far.
Okay.
By far.
And these are being backfilled, the ones that are backfilled, but they are naturally occurring cavities?
That's correct, yeah.
Thank you. Could never understand that.
Sure. And just to elaborate just a bit more, so we do a calculation every year not every year, but we've done it. I forgot the term for it, I'm sorry, but we calculate what the safe yield of our local basins are, and what the safe yield is how much you can extract from those natural groundwater storage basin without putting it in harm. So it calculates over time what the average recharge is naturally, and basically we don't want to exceed that, and we've stayed within that.
I'm sorry, I forgot one of the questions when I was before. Yesterday, and this is really to squelch a rumor if I can, yesterday I was approached by 3 different people in 2 different locations, and they said to me, why should we conserve our water when we've got excessive water? Because they can come in and they can take it to us and reduce our water usage. I said, you're not making sense, but I'll ask the question. Is it possible that the state of California could take some of the water from our excessive water that we have?
No. One, okay. I think it would be physically challenging to do that.
Right.
We have water rights to our water. Right. I mentioned the adjudicated water basin in Beaumont. That every single drop of that water is the city's, with the exception of whatever Beaumont Trey Valley puts in there. But they're in the same boat. Yeah, another agency cannot come into the city, drill a well, and send it somewhere else.
Okay, I just needed an answer from you because it is something that's going along. They're going to take our water from us by selling. We'd have to sell it to them or do something of that nature. And I have spoken to the San Gregorio Pass Water Agency Mr.
Eckhart.
Eckhart and also Mr. Walton. And they've assured me that that isn't so, but I needed it from City of Banning. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Hello, I'm Linda Flannelly, and segueing from what she just said, I think we got a little complacent in here because of the article that was in the Gazette after the mandate was sent out. I think it kind of made us complacent. Appreciate your coming here and enforcing all that. We have to be good stewards and conservationists for this, and just good to know that they can't take our water that we've preserved. But I think this was kind of misleading and made us all a little bit thinking it wasn't as bad as it was.
Thank you.
Also, I was a bucket lady for the first 6 months we lived here. We've been here about 18 months. And there's a little device you can get put on your water heater that does instant hot water, like, because my master bedroom was all the way in the back and it would take forever to warm up. And I did the bucket. And our plumber said, oh, I can get you a device that it's on a timer and it just instantly heats your water up so you don't have that waste. So I got to get rid of my bucket. But that is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we finish up, I would like to clear up one misconception, is that the golf courses are totally exempt. They're considered a sports field, so they're totally exempt from these regulations. Yes.
Yeah, sorry for the last minute. My name is Bob Hicks, and my point is really more one of a rhetorical question, and that is, it is my understanding that there has been no new water retention capacity built in the state of California since 1974. At that point in time, the population of the state was below 20 million. Today, it's closer to 33 or 34 million. And over all these years, we've seen our state spend money on some of the most ridiculous projects, not the least of which is the fast train, right? That is billions of dollars. And so they have us focused on depriving us by guilting us for overusing a natural resource, which if we had bothered to have our state government build additional water retention, this subject wouldn't even be being talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, I'd like to give Art a big hand for his excellent presentation today. Thank you everybody for coming.
Attending. Glad to see you here. Thanks.